Hey, Fran fam, welcome to another edition of Life and Style with Francyne. Thank you for joining me on this lunchtime edition of the show. We have a wonderful guest in the studio for today, Angela Ray. She is an actress and an author. She recently appeared on the Comedy Central show, Robbie? Is that
Yes,
correct,
that's
Angela?
correct. Yes.
Yeah. And you probably recognize Angela from the show Atlanta, the wildly popular show Atlanta. So join me in welcoming Angela to the show. Hey, Angela.
Hey, Francine, thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for reaching out. And I'm so glad we could accommodate you in your schedule and just have you here to talk about all the wonderful projects you have going on, including your book and how you are thriving in this pandemic. I know everyone is affected right now in some form or fashion, and if they say they're not, they're in denial. So
Definitely.
they're in denial. So talk a little bit about how you became an actress. Let's start there. What made you want to become an actress? What were some of your inspirations? And just kind of go from there.
So I got started in acting via speaking, and I got started speaking in the church. So my first introduction to saying something and getting applause was doing an Easter speech. And
Okay.
I'm too young to remember, but it's always funny to hear, particularly my older cousins, recount that particular Easter. My mother had told me to make sure that I spoke loud and clear. And so for me as a kid, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure everyone hears me. So apparently I went all the way up to the front of the church and just screamed, "Happy Easter Day!" And
Yeah.
the whole church just erupted. And I guess something in me said, oh, people like when I'm on the mic. And
Yeah.
from there, I got started in speaking contests in elementary school. I was competing both with students at my school, in the county, as well as the state. I did that both in the community, at school, and at church. So by the time I headed to college, I was a speech communications major with a concentration in performance.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's kind of how I got my start. I did work with the Black Theater Troupe while I was in college. I am a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Shout out to all my
All
fellow Tar
right.
Heels out
Okay.
there. So that's really where I was able to start feeling what I wanted to do, because with the Ebony Readers Onyx Theater, that was a Black theater troupe there, I got an opportunity to just experiment so much. We did plays, we did skits, we wrote a lot of our material. So that's really where I got a chance to kind of fill things out. And then eventually, soon after graduation, got my first agent, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. So you were very fortunate that you knew what you wanted to do very early on, and was able to segue into that career-wise, right after college.
Yes. And I won't say but yes. And with this industry, it's so very different from most industries. So for people who go to school to be a teacher, they become education majors, and then they interview at different schools and they get a job. Acting is totally different. So,
Sure.
we interview all the time for
Yes.
various jobs. And
Yes.
so, you mentioned I was on Atlanta. That was one episode. So when that one episode was done, it was time to interview or audition for another one. And
Okay.
so it's good to know. Oh my gosh, it's good to know. I went to college with so many people who had no idea what they wanted to do for a living. Like they
Mhm.
were just completely clueless. So it was definitely for me a blessing to know, at the same time, because the career that I have chosen has no barrier to entry, which means, tomorrow someone could go out and do something silly on a video, become viral, and then
Yeah.
get offered a job. It just very, especially in this age of social media, it just
Yes.
varies on how you get your work.
Do you think that makes it a little more difficult, as far as competition, because social media has enabled anybody, which I love. That's a great thing about social media, but it can also be a bad thing because you can be anything you want to be, and someone notices and then boom. But do you think your talent more or less makes room in those instances, or is it's just competition and it's just part of the industry?
I think it levels the playing field. It's one of those
Yeah.
things that just like anyone can have a social media page, an Instagram, a TikTok, and do something and get noticed, so can I. So
Yeah.
I really think it levels the playing field. It gives us access that we've never had before, access to casting directors and agents, other actors who may be further along in their career. It's just, social media is a tool. It's just how you use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
The
So
name of your book is, I know it's,
Megastar Student Leadership.
yes,
Lessons I learned as an actress that can help you lead, achieve, and succeed.
yes.
So I wrote the book based on my acting career. Outside of acting, I mentioned that I got my start acting because I was a speaker. And I still do a lot of speaking, primarily to high school and college students, definitely to women's organizations as well. And I realized there were many lessons I was learning along the way during my acting career. And so in my book, in the first half of the book, I share a lesson that I learned as an actress, and then I adapt that same lesson for student leaders. So that's the first part of the book. And then the second half of the book, I've interviewed successful college graduates from a variety of backgrounds, because what I realize is even though I know the lessons I learned are universal, some people aren't going to connect with lessons that an actress learned, but they
Sure.
may connect with the life of a rocket scientist who I did happen to interview a rocket scientist. I
Wow.
interviewed a young lady who started off at community college because she wasn't ready to go to a 4-year school. She eventually transferred and went on to get her master's. So letting people know it doesn't matter where you start, it's how you finish. So there are a variety of successful graduates that I've interviewed for the second part of the book, hopefully presenting a well-rounded journey and path for students to follow if they're interested.
What's the lesson, the first part of the book? What is that lesson that you adapt?
Okay, so for example, one of the lessons is classes are classic. And so for me as an actress, even though I am working and, I was just in a show earlier this year that premiered actually last month, I'm still constantly getting coached for upcoming auditions. So that's the lesson that I learned. And so for student leaders, I mean, it is what it is. The reason you're in school, the reason you're in college is to learn. And so classes are going to be classic for student leaders as well. That's where you're going to learn. And I think the thing that often people forget is, oh, when I'm done, when I graduate high school, or when I'm done with college, whether that is undergrad, graduate, PhD, I'm done. But there, you're constantly being tested and updated in your careers. I know for me as an actress, we are constantly changing things. There was a time when every single time I had an audition, I went to a casting director's office, and that is where my audition took place. I still go to in-person auditions. Obviously, with the pandemic, we are not doing in-person auditions. But even prior to the pandemic, a lot of our auditions were submitted via tape, meaning that as an actor, I'm responsible for getting my audition taped and submitting that to the casting director. And that has been going on now for about 9 or 10 years. And at first, it was just, every, 2 or 3 auditions may have been self-taped. But here in the Southeast, I would say 85% of my auditions are self-taped. That's a new skill. Now I can either learn that skill or I can go to a self-tape studio and get it done. But either way, that is a change that has happened and I've had to adapt. And so classes and learning are always going to be classic. That's one example of the lessons. I include 40 in the book.
Wow. Nice. I was just part of another forum, and there were 2 actors. My girlfriend did a short film, and so we were discussing the short film with the actors and the producer and director, and we were talking about, so what's going on? What are your plans? As we move forward, and they were talking about self-tapes. So that's interesting. When you said that, I was thinking, I need to ask her, self-tapes, because a lot of times I'll see things and it's like they want you to tape yourself, self-tape, and then submit it. And you just have that one take. You know what I mean? Well, of course, you could do 50 takes on your own, but you have that one tape that you ship off, correct?
Well, it depends. If the casting director is open to more than one take, I certainly send more than one because as an actor, I'm kind of shooting in the dark about what the casting director wants, what production may want. So I often, particularly if it's just two lines, I'm sending two takes, sometimes three,
Sure.
but don't tell nobody that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Wow. So you are currently, talk about some other projects that you've worked on, and then let's segue to your upcoming project.
So let's see. I mentioned Robbie on Comedy Central, which was an absolute blast to work on. What's really interesting about this point in my acting career is I'm beginning to do more comedy. And up
Yeah.
until I was on Tyler Perry's Love Thy Neighbor, I didn't even know I would be doing comedy. I considered myself a dramatic actress, and you could not tell me otherwise. But I had an opportunity to do that show. And that really, number one, it opened an audience up to seeing me as funny, and it helped me work out those comedy chops. And so the opportunities to do more comedy have come. You mentioned Atlanta, which is a very different kind of comedy. And then, of course, Robbie. Working with Rory Scoble, who was absolutely amazing to work with. So many talented people on that show. The legend Bo Bridges. That was definitely an honor to get to work with him. So it was the very first season, and I felt like talking with the producers during production. It was a great opportunity. Uh,
Angela, where are you based?
Atlanta,
Atlanta. Okay. Okay.
most days.
Okay. So talk about the other projects. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that's okay. Last year, I had an opportunity to be a part of a Netflix show called Insatiable. Unfortunately, it has since been canceled just after two seasons. But of course, with the pandemic, so many changes are being made at networks. And so that is understandable. Also, BET Plus, which is the streaming platform for BET, that
Yeah.
launched last fall. So I had an opportunity to do a show on BET Plus called Bigger, produced by the incredible Will Packer. So that was a lot of fun as well.
I like that show. That was good. And so now you have a feature film that you've been a part of?
Yes, it is called Through Her Eyes, and it is based on true events. I play May Ann Wimbush. I play the mother of a young girl who desegregates a school in Marion, Alabama.
My goodness.
And the film that you all will see was shot in Atlanta. However, the first attempt at shooting the movie was in Selma and Marion. And that for me was an incredible experience. I had never been to Selma. If you know anything about the civil rights movement, you know the Edmund Pettus Bridge. You've
Yeah.
seen footage from Bloody Sunday. And so to know that we were shooting there was was it was it made me take a break, almost like a pause. So we were shooting there. We shot the entire film there. And unfortunately, I don't know how this happened. I have never been a part of a project where this has happened, but all of the footage was corrupt. The director he sent that footage off all around the country trying to get it salvaged and was unable to. So we had to reshoot, and we reshot in Atlanta. But I would not give anything for the opportunity and the lessons and the experience of being in both Selma and Marion. I didn't realize how, aside from just the bridge, how historic the place was, and how in some ways life is still it moves at a different pace in Selma. And the director, who is originally from there, he had kind of warned the cast, like, things don't move fast in Selma. This is not Atlanta. I know a lot of you are from Atlanta. This is not
Sure.
Atlanta. And I didn't know what that meant until I went to my first restaurant, and it took like 25 minutes to get my food. But baby, let me tell you, it was well worth the wait. Like
Yes.
every place that we went, everything was made in-house
Yeah.
from scratch. And so that is why it took a long time. So I was perfectly happy with, once I got my food at the first place, I was like, oh, this is why it took 20 minutes. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I had an opportunity to go to the bridge. One morning I had a late call time, and I was in the hotel, and I was like, you know what? I don't have to be to set until this afternoon. I should go ahead and try to find a bridge, because I didn't know where it was. And I hit
Sure.
up the guy who's playing my husband. I sent him a quick text. I was like, I don't know if you're in the hotel or not, but I'm going to find a bridge. And it just so happened it was like maybe 9-10 minutes from the hotel. So I had a chance to go, I parked at the base of the bridge. I walked across the bridge, and knowing the history of that place, I can't tell you what it was like to be on
Oh, I
that
know.
bridge.
I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably surreal for you, you
That is the
know.
word.
Yeah. Whenever you go anywhere where there was such an impactful experience, specifically for us,
Mm-hmm.
and you go back to that place, it is almost as if you're embodied by the past, and that whatever is there, it's still there. So I can't imagine. I can only imagine. That's what I meant to say. I can only imagine, because you were determined to have that experience, obviously, because something was pulling you.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
to just knowing, I see that picture even now, in my head, where it's like, yeah, that would be something, although the film was corrupted and whatnot, you still have that experience for yourself, which I can imagine was just amazing. Talk about, and even the story itself is so timely, because just to think about what we're dealing with all the overt racism. I mean, we've got people brandishing guns, and people are just trying to peacefully protest. And so imagining, Mae Winbush, was her name Mae?
My character was named Mayanne. Mm-hmm.
Mayanne, okay, your daughter, just thinking about, we think about Ruby Bridges and just what children have to endure, or what they had to endure. So this story
Oh,
is
yeah.
timely, because here we are again trying to interrupt this racist system, or the system of racism. So that, when will we have an opportunity to see that?
I don't know exactly. I was hearing why, and because I know that the director and a couple of the producers, they had an interview maybe about 3 weeks ago, and they were talking about July, August. I don't know if it's going to be a limited release, which means,
Sure.
Atlanta, Chicago, New York, LA, or if it's going to be released online, as some of the projects lately have, people have been doing that, where it premieres. And because movie theaters are closed around the country, it
Yeah.
premieres at home. So I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I look forward to seeing it. And I'm glad
Yeah.
not only do I have those experiences, but I took a lot of video while we were in Selma and Marion.
Oh,
And
good.
I
Good.
would recommend anyone who has the opportunity to go visit, because there's one thing I do want to mention that people may not know exists. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how you reserve time. There's a museum, if you will, that's in Selma. And I say museum, that is what it's being called. One of the ladies who is very supportive of Dr. King and many of the people who came to Selma, basically she would allow them to stay at her house. And the lady of the house, the wife, she just died in 2013. But apparently, for whatever reason, she had a lot of foresight not to update a lot of stuff. So when she died, her daughter has kind of preserved the house and turned it into a museum. That was one of the places that we shot when we were in Selma. And what is so uh surreal, to use that word again, about being there is, I remember we were sitting on the couch, between takes, and there was a magazine on the table, because again, this is a museum. So there's this Life magazine, and we can see a picture of Dr. King sitting on a couch, and all of a sudden the actor who plays my husband was like, whoa, that's the same couch we're sitting on right
Oh my
now.
God.
And we started looking around the room, and
Mm.
it was surreal that she had the foresight not to update a lot of stuff, even down to the fact that Dr. King had pajamas that he wore when he was at her house. Those pajamas are still in that same bedroom, on the same bed, that when you do the museum tour, it's the Jackson house in Selma. You can see all of that. That was definitely
Oh my
surreal.
God, Angela, that is amazing. Goodness.
So if
Wow.
you can get to Selma, I would
Yeah.
recommend visiting the Jackson House.
The Jackson House.
I
Wow.
think I don't. It's not a regular museum where you just show up
Sure.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You do have to call to schedule a tour, but
Yeah.
I would recommend it.
Wow. So how are you faring as an actress, um, as a woman? How are you faring, you know, during this pandemic? How have you been coping?
I am very grateful to be surrounded by my family during this time,
Sure.
because what I do understand and what I've seen and what I've witnessed is a lot of people are isolated. A lot of people are dealing with depression.
Mhm.
I've I've seen it nationally, where people have taken their life, over the past few weeks, but then it's been in my circle as well. Um, and so I'm very grateful to be in my right mind
Sure.
and to
Yeah.
know that even though weeping may endure for a night, joy comes in the morning,
Mhm.
and this too will pass. In terms specifically of the acting, we have, Hollywood is shut down.
Yeah.
There are, very, very few things that have shot during this time. One of my favorite shows, All Rise on CBS,
Yes.
they did a pandemic episode. They
Yeah.
did an episode where they shot and everyone was at home. So I can't wait to see that. As you can see by some of the commercials that are on, if you're paying attention, you can tell some of those are shot at home. The Geico crew, which I think they're
Yes.
hilarious, they have like a commercial where it's like they're all on Zoom. So there have been a few creative ways that the entertainment industry has kept going, but most of us, we are just beginning to get auditions again because things are projected to be up and running. I know that I interviewed a few directors and producers maybe in the last couple of weeks, and so some of them have been talking about getting back to work, at least on the producer side, because they go back to work before the actors show up.
Yeah.
um, but with what we're seeing in terms of the numbers trending and continuing to go up, even though there are plans to go back, I honestly wonder how long, if we're all back let's say by the end of July, I don't know how long that's going to last.
You don't know what if you go back in July, then how long it'll last after that?
Right. I mean, because what we're seeing in some industries like bars, there are states where bars had reopened and they're now shutting them back down. So I'm not projecting that. I'm not
Yes.
hoping that.
Right. Right.
Just
Of course.
being aware that when you're on set, you're in close quarters. When you're getting your hair and your makeup done, you're in close quarters. I mean, there are great guidelines that our unions together have come up with, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
But we still don't know what it's going to be like once we're actually on set.
Yeah, because I know our gym was set. We were opening in phases. I'm in Michigan, and we were opening in phases. And the last phase, I think, beauty salons opened June 15th. Some people I knew were like, "We're waiting until July 1st. We're just going to, you know." And then the gyms were set to open, and they were set to open last Friday. And the governor decided, nope, not opening. And so I said, well, I haven't been to the gym and I don't know when because it's I'm good. As
Hmm.
far as
Yeah,
you know,
I hear you.
you can either you can either look at this and say it's not real, or you can and put yourself at risk, or you can be super cautious. I'm going to be super cautious and err on that side. So even if I'm overreacting, I'm still safe and I'm keeping my family safe because I've seen too many people die
Oh
from
yeah.
throughout this pandemic. And it's like, it's real to me. 100,000 names on front of the New York Times. It's real,
Oh yeah.
But I can definitely see where I've seen like this, Arizona, Florida. I can't think of the other one. Arizona, Florida. It's not Georgia, is it? Where
Well,
they're
Georgia's numbers are trending really high right now. Like, we haven't backed off of reopening, but the numbers are trending very high.
sure. Yeah. And so you also do voiceovers as well, right?
I do.
Okay.
I haven't been busy thus far during this time, but that is a very competitive field, like very competitive. And
Yeah.
I'll give your viewers an example of what I mean. If you travel a lot and you pay attention to maybe local radio or local news programming, even before I dabbled at all, stepped a foot into voiceovers, I would notice that when I was watching the local news when I was in Chicago, and the person would say, "Look up for Sky 5." That was the same voice I heard in Atlanta and the same voice that I'd heard in Florida. So I realized that, a lot of people, there are a few people who have a lot of the work. Definitely they're open to some newbies, but yeah, even when I'm listening to radio and, there's a party or a concert, it's the same person voicing the concert promo in Atlanta, who's voicing it in Charlotte, who's voicing it in Richmond, who's voicing it in Orlando.
Wow. I've heard that it was highly competitive, and
Hmm.
it's probably, of course, not great for anybody else who wants to break into the business or is currently in the business and would like more work. So what's next for Angela? You're auditioning. What are you doing to stay, busy as far as you're auditioning? What else do you have going on as far as, or what else is coming down the pike for you?
Well, in terms of projects in the can, Through Her Eyes is the only one that I have in the can that prior to the pandemic that will be airing.
Okay.
Right before, and I do mean right before the world shut down, I had some very big auditions for some major projects that I cannot talk about. So we will
Sure.
see,
Yeah.
whether or not they continue forward, because what some of the buzz, the rumors, we don't know yet, is that projects, let's say something was on its second or third season, those will be the projects that will have priority as opposed to pilots or brand new shows that don't have a fan base or any skin in the game.
Okay.
So I had auditions that for both pilots as well as shows that were already established. So honestly, we won't know. We don't know. We don't know how demand is going to be, because everyone's going to be asking for production space in terms of the studio. So
Sure.
honestly, on that end, we really don't know. We're just it's almost like a wait and see approach.
And how long have you been acting?
Well over 15 years. My
15.
very first television show was a teeny bopper drama called Dawson's Creek.
Oh my God. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yes. Oh my goodness. So it's in you to act. No,
Oh
not
yeah.
knowing what the pandemic is going to bring post COVID, whatever. How do you, or have you thought about how you will pivot if things are, slow moving? Because as you said, production space, people are going to be clamoring for it, and there's going to be priorities. So because I know it's going to be a slow, well, I'm
But
thinking,
that's not what we're hearing. We're hearing that once it opens, that's what we have heard is the floodgates. It's like everybody's going to be in a rush because every day that Hollywood has been shut down, projects have been losing money, studios have been losing money. So we've been hearing that once it opens, it's going to be busy, 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 busy.
okay.
That was what we were hearing, but that was also before states started to reopen in phases, and the numbers aren't favorable right now.
Yeah. Wow. So where can we find your book?
You can find it on my website,
Okay.
which is angelaray.com. Also, the book has its own website, which is Megastar Leadership. And I'll hold it up just in case
Yeah.
people are like, oh, this is what the book looks like.
Oh,
Let's
you
see.
look cute. All right.
I'm
Oh,
trying to like get right in
I
front of the
got it.
camera.
Oh, wow. So it's
So yeah,
Megastar Leadership is
Megastar Student Leadership.
Megastar Student Leadership. And
Mhm.
that's the website, Megastar
Oh,
Student.
I'm sorry. Megastar Leadership is the website. I was just
Okay.
the title is Megastar Student Leadership.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
And when did you write your book? Angela?
It was a journey because I started working on this book in, I think, 2014, 2015. And at that time, I had this, what I thought was a very creative title called Rehearsing for the Leading Role, because I felt students were in college and high school to rehearse for that leading role in life. And that title did not register with people. People really thought the book was all about acting. And so I rebranded it and repackaged it, changed the title to Megastar Student Leadership, and re-released that about a year ago. And so we're finally doing the Amazon launch, because something that
Nice.
is very interesting is people will put your stuff on Amazon. Like, let's say someone buys this book, and then they'll try to sell it for like $40 because I don't actually have an Amazon account. And
Ah,
I saw
didn't
my
think
first book
about
out there
that.
one time, my book of poetry. It was right after I had been, I don't know, I had just had a recent television appearance. And every now and then I try to Google to see if there are reviews and things
Yeah,
like that. And I
yeah.
found my book, and it was a very used copy. It had water stains and everything, but someone was trying to sell it for $500, and I was like, "No, I'm not that famous. I promise you, no one's going to pay $500 for a water stained book, even if my autograph is in it. It's just not going to happen."
Yeah. What are some goals that you have, some personal, professional goals that you have, um, in light of everything? It doesn't matter. Sky's the limit. Whatever's happened has happened, and we're going to get through it. What are some goals for Angela that you still, you said not that famous, but you are. You are a working actress, in the sense of how actresses work. And I'm sure, not to say that you could not use more work, but you have been in the business 15 years. Dawson's Creek, come on now. Since Dawson's Creek. So you've been in the business and have decided to stay in the business in one form or another. What are some things that you would like to realize, manifest for yourself, if you feel comfortable talking about them? Because there's certain things I want, but I won't say anything to anybody because it's like, I wanted to manifest first. So, but what can you share with us that, it's like, okay, yeah, we're standing with you on that. What are some personal goals or, personal professional goals that you'd like to see manifest for Angela, no matter what, pandemic or what?
Definitely one would be booking that series regular. And so for those of you who may not be familiar with that term in acting or in television, it's when you have that guaranteed paycheck, when
Yeah.
you're on, I won't say you're necessarily on every episode. Most series regulars are, but yeah, that, becoming a series regular, I've done the recurring, I've done guest star. And so that's, you start off as a co-star, and then you can go up to guest star, recurring, and then series regular. So I've had guest star, I've had recurring. So definitely looking for that series regular. And I've been very blessed because I have started to audition for series regular roles. So that's how you get them. You got to first start by auditioning. So that is definitely one goal. And then doing more with my hosting and emceeing. For me, I feel like hosting and emceeing, that's just a great combination of the acting, taking that performance element with the speaking.
Yeah.
And so I had a contract for about 6 years representing a grocery store, traveling throughout the East Coast, emceeing one of their live events. And even though I'd emceed charity galas and talent shows and all kinds of programs prior to that, that was the one where I really got my workout, because we had long days. This wasn't an expo. And so, the expo started at 10 a.m. Sometimes it didn't end until 7 or 8 at night. And I was on the mic about 80% of that time. And so learning how
You
to
love
manage,
it? Oh,
oh, I do.
girl. Oh, that feels so
Absolutely.
good.
But it was learning. I mean,
Yeah.
I had to learn because, there were times when, something didn't work. And so when something doesn't work and you're on the mic, your goal is to fill that time, and not to fill that time by saying, "Oh gosh, I'm not sure what we're going to do because we're having technical difficulties." It's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to start another game. We're going to have an interaction. DJ, kick that beat. We're going to go ahead and
Yeah.
start off with the cha-cha slide, or we're going to do the little wobble or whatever while we figure out whatever else is going on. And so that really helped me build that muscle.
Yeah.
this year, it's interesting. I almost feel like they knew something that we all didn't know. But 2020, my client did not sign on to do the tour. So it wasn't me. They're just not doing the tour this year. And they made that decision in the fall. So I'm like, oh, y'all saved a lot of money, because there were
Sure
people
did.
who were committed to it. And I don't know how the money works. I don't know if the client says, hey, we're just going to push you over to 2021, or do they get their money back? Most people want to hold on to the money and just put it to the next year.
Yeah,
So, working with that client, oh my gosh, like I said, I really learned how to manage a crowd, how to improv. And I've done improv as an actress. That's why I say I feel like it's just a great combination of my speaking background and my acting background. So
sure.
that is one of the things that, I would like to do more of. Sometimes I think about Terrence J. Many people, they know him as an actor, but he's also a great host and a great MC. So I often say, I'm going to be the female Terrence J, because
Yes.
I see him working seamlessly with both. I've never seen anyone say, well, why is he acting? He's just an MC, or why is he hosting? Isn't he an actor? I've never seen that. And so that is one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing more of.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Wow. Anything else you want to add before we close the show?
Well, I
You know what?
mentioned,
I have
talking.
one question. Can I get this
Okay.
question? Because
Yeah, sure.
what is it like? Or you go ahead, because I'll hold my question. I didn't mean to do that, but I just remembered this question that I had.
No, you can go ahead.
Um, what is it like? How do you get through audition after audition after audition? And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. How do you manage? What do you do in those instances when, I mean, if you auditioned, you wanted it, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you manage when you don't?
Oh, I don't know. I think for me, it's a part of it now. Obviously there's some roles, some projects, some people associated with projects that I'm just like, oh, I just want to be a part of this project.
Yeah.
um it is disappointing, but it's a part of the job. And one of the things that I heard a casting director say, that it's not just getting paid in terms of the work, but auditioning is the job as well, and booking it is just
Yeah.
the icing on the cake. And so I think I've learned to take that approach more.
Okay.
And so the audition process for me has become a lot more fun when I look at it like that,
Yes.
giving something and creating something in the audition process. But yeah, I'm human. There are times that it was that project that I really,
Yeah.
really, really wanted. And, oh, if I just would have gotten that one, where would my career be now? But, it's par for the course. It happens. I mean, you're definitely going to get more no's than yeses. Looking at someone as established as Gabrielle Union and hearing her talk about going into audition for Scandal. And, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So knowing that no matter,
Right.
yeah, like everyone,
Yes.
hears a no every now and then, even for those people who may not even audition anymore, but they're pitching projects. So even those people, they're people like the Denzels who probably don't even audition anymore, but they're pitching projects, or they are attached to a project that may or may not get picked up. So yeah, the disappointment and the no's, it's just it happens. It's a part of it, and you just continue to move on. Try not to get too stuck, on one project, knowing that okay, it didn't happen. Let's just move on. Something else is coming. Because I've had that. I have had where, particularly, there was something that either I didn't get, or I wanted to even get an audition for, and I didn't. Um, but recognizing what is coming, and letting it go. The main thing is letting it go. I
Sure.
had one that last year that it just did not work out, where I was able to be a part of an audition because I was traveling, and I was so disappointed. And lo and behold, I got offered a job on the same show like 2 weeks later. So you just never know.
You just never know. So it's important to have a positive attitude and stay, because things can, I like to think that rejection is redirection, and sometimes that works and sometimes we are human. And it's
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be redirected. I want that opportunity. So, but that's good to know, because I we often hear it, but I guess it is part of the job, and you make it
Mm-hmm.
part of the job. And the fact that you're attaching something to it to make it seem fun does make it less of a tedious, arduous process.
Oh yeah.
So, what are your final thoughts before we close the show? Anything you want to add outside of where we can get your book again, and so we can pick that up? What are your final thoughts?
Um, just there's an old church song that I remember we used to sing at the end of service, and it was called "Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand,
Yeah,
make this world a better place if you can." And
yeah,
I think that that is so important and great advice for right now, for at any time, but particularly now. I think that we all have no idea what people are going through, the private heartaches, the challenges. I was talking to someone last night. I actually, one of the things that I was able to do to kind of channel some of my creative energy is an online talk show similar to yours. I
yeah.
broadcast in the evenings,
Okay.
and in the middle of the broadcast, all of a sudden, my guest, her daughter, literally just came right here and was like, "Hey," and we had a great laugh about it. But there are so many people who are balancing home and work and
Yeah,
children. And while on the one hand, it may seem like, oh, they're your children. Of course, you're supposed to take care of them. I don't think that that is the issue for many people, but it is that balancing act of making sure, particularly when school is in, making sure that they get their work done and
yeah,
they're taken care of, and then the responsibilities of the home. And then for those who are working from home, how you balance all of that can be stressful. And
especially if you're not
no,
used to doing that on a daily basis.
mm-hmm,
Every day, in and out. The children are home. The dog is, I had to barricade my door and tell my dog, I'll be out, I'll be out soon. And I'm thinking, please don't scratch. So I have to, put something there so he doesn't bark or scratch. Tell my family, I'm going live, So
right,
it's like, you have a show today? It's like, yeah, I got a show today. So
mm-hmm,
everybody knows, shh, keep the dog. So that is definitely something that a lot of people, I like what you said, because being empathetic with people in their situations, because this is so new. This was not our normal. Not that normal was working before this, but
right,
um, in certain instances, it's not to say that we want schools to stay out and, kids are home and parents are bombarded trying to homeschool, doing Zoom school, then do a Zoom meeting for work.
mm-hmm,
That's, I feel for him. My son is grown. So it's like, I feel for that. I watch my sister with my niece. So yeah, that is a good one to really, we certainly need to reach out and touch somebody's hand, because it's just so much going on and
oh yeah.
so little. I mean, the love is there, but we can certainly use a lot more, a
Uh,
lot more.
Definitely. Or to quote this old school, I'm about to tell my age, but I would just say I saw it
Ah!
on YouTube.
And
But
if
one
I
of the,
know it, I'm gonna tell my age. If I'm like, oh,
you
you're
know,
right.
uh,
Oh, I'm telling my age.
social media is great. When I say social media, it's great to see, family and friends on Facebook and comment on posts. But every now and then we need
Yeah.
to pick up the phone and let our fingers do the walking. I don't know if you remember that commercial where they said, let your fingers do the walking,
Yeah.
uh, for calling people.
Oh,
There is nothing that substitutes for a phone call. I mean, even, texting is even okay, especially if it's in the middle of the day. Someone crosses your mind and you're like, I don't know if they're working from home. So it's nothing like that. It's okay to send that text. But the phone calls are great too, because I had one of my sorority sisters posted one of those posts on Facebook. And I was like, I'm not even commenting. I'm just going to text her. And something said, well, you should call. And I was like, well, I don't know. So I sent a text like, hey, I saw your post. Is everything good? She's like, yeah, just pray for me. And so I was like, okay. But there was something that was gnawing at me like,
yeah.
maybe you needed to call. So, really paying attention. And, families are stressed, but singles are isolated. People who live by themselves, don't think it's just the families. It's everybody. You just never know. People whose loved ones are in rest homes and nursing homes, and they can't get to them and they can't go see them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that is like. I mean, I'm very fortunate that that's not my situation, but
Yeah.
I could not imagine what that would be like to not be able to get to your loved one, and not to even know if they're getting the best of care.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that is nice about being able to pop up at a nursing home or pop
Yeah.
up in the hospital, to be an advocate for your loved one. And we can't do that right now.
No, I was an advocate for my mom before she passed several years ago, and I just cannot imagine being in that position now. And I kicked up some dust when I was in those places. Like, they had to come and call, but it was like, hey, I'm her advocate. And if I gotta raise some sand to get this done, and you gotta put me out, yes, because of it, that's so be it. So I just can't imagine not being able to have that autonomy and that ability to advocate the way I remembered advocating for my mom. So it's crazy. It's just
It
crazy.
is.
So, and then, singles checking, I'm not married, but I have my family here. But just checking on my girlfriends that do live alone is like, hey, we can be going about and it's like, you okay? You good?
Mm-hmm.
How are you? No, how are you?
Right.
Not the gloss over. How are you? So it is definitely, we definitely know one thing. We need one another. And to think that we don't, that is just a terrible place to be in. Really.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you for taking the time, the middle of your day, to speak with me, Angela. I wish you well in all your endeavors. The name of the book and the website we can get the book.
The name of the book is called Megastar Student Leadership, and you can get it on megastarleadership.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you much success as things slowly open up, hopefully with wisdom. And we look forward to seeing you on the screen.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to have me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I thank you. I appreciate you. Have a great day, lady.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
No. All right, guys. Thanks for watching another edition of Life and Style with Francyne. What a great interview. What a great actress. We appreciate you for tuning in to another edition. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Francyne Walker, or you can follow me at Francyne Walker TV on Instagram, or go to my Facebook page, Life and Style with Francyne, and you will catch us there. Thanks again, and have a great day. See you guys soon. Mwah.